Imagine a showdown between two of Rome's most powerful figures. One, an intellectual and orator who represented the old guard of Roman aristocracy. The other, a soldier and populist who wielded the loyalty of Caesar's veterans and the common people. This was the battle between Cicero and Mark Antony, two men whose rivalry would shape the fate of the Roman Republic. Their conflict was more than just a personal feud. It was a clash between two visions of Rome's future: Cicero's defense of the traditional Senate-driven republic and Antony's populist appeal to the masses and military. This bitter rivalry culminated in Cicero's brutal execution and cemented Antony's role in the fall of the Republic. Cicero, Rome's greatest orator and a philosopher, was deeply committed to the ideals of the Republic. He saw himself as the protector of Rome's traditions, laws, and the balance of power that had kept the Senate at the center of Roman politics for centuries. Cicero's worldview was rooted in the belief that the Senate represented Rome's best interests, and that the rise of men like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony threatened the very fabric of Roman society. As a member of the senatorial elite, Cicero's political career was defined by his efforts to preserve the Republic against what he saw as the encroaching tyranny of populist leaders. He had famously thwarted the Catiline conspiracy, portraying himself as Rome's savior. And now he set his sights on Mark Antony, Caesar's ally and one of the most powerful men in Rome. On the other side was Mark Antony, a military man and a close ally of Julius Caesar. While Cicero represented the interests of the Senate, Antony was seen as the champion of the common people, particularly Caesar's veterans. Antony's populist appeal came from his connection to Caesar and his ability to command the loyalty of the army, which had become an increasingly powerful force in Roman politics. Antony was a man of action, more comfortable on the battlefield than in the Senate. To many, he represented a break from the old aristocratic order. While Cicero clung to the idea of Rome's traditional institutions, Antony embodied the rising power of the populists, who sought to redistribute power and wealth in favor of the common people. The conflict between Cicero and Antony came to a head after the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE. While Cicero was not involved in the conspiracy to kill Caesar, he viewed the assassination as an opportunity to restore the Republic. But standing in the way of this vision was Mark Antony, who was determined to claim Caesar's mantle and consolidate power. Cicero launched a series of speeches known as the Philippics, modeled after Demosthenes' speeches against Philip of Macedon. In these speeches, Cicero unleashed a scathing attack on Antony, accusing him of tyranny, corruption, and betrayal of Roman values. Cicero painted Antony as a threat to the Republic, a man driven by personal ambition who sought to become Rome's next dictator. In the Philippics, Cicero's words were blistering. "You, Antony, have destroyed the Republic, not for its sake, but for your own sake." Cicero's rhetorical brilliance was on full display, but his speeches were more than just political attacks. They were personal. Cicero made Antony out to be a reckless, morally bankrupt leader who cared nothing for Rome's traditions. He also aimed to rally the Senate and the Roman people against Antony, hoping to reassert the power of the Senate. Mark Antony did not take Cicero's attacks lightly. He viewed Cicero's speeches as both a political challenge and a personal insult. Cicero's Philippics made Antony the symbol of everything wrong with populism and one-man rule, and Antony's hatred for Cicero grew deeper with each word. When Octavian, the future Augustus, joined forces with Antony and Lepidus to form the Second Triumvirate, Antony saw his opportunity for revenge. One of the first acts of the Triumvirate was the introduction of the Proscriptions, a list of political enemies to be executed. At the top of the list, Cicero. In 43 BCE, Cicero was captured and brutally murdered by Antony's men. His hands and head were cut off and displayed in the Roman Forum. an act meant to silence the voice that had so publicly humiliated Antony. It was a gruesome end for one of Rome's greatest minds, and it marked the definitive victory of populism over the old republican elite that Cicero had fought to protect. The conflict between Cicero and Mark Antony wasn't just about two men. It was about two competing visions of Rome's future. Cicero represented the senatorial elite and the traditional republican order. He believed in the power of the Senate, the rule of law, and the importance of preserving Rome's institutions. In contrast, Antony represented the populist forces that were gaining power, particularly through the army and the common people. This clash between elitism and populism is a recurring theme throughout history. Cicero's vision was one of stability and tradition, but it was disconnected from the needs and desires of the average Roman, who saw men like Antony and Caesar as champions of their interests. Antony's populism, on the other hand, was focused on appealing to the masses, but it often came at the expense of the republican values that had once defined Rome. In the end, Cicero's idealism couldn't stand against the tide of populism and military power. His belief in the Senate's ability to govern effectively was out of touch with the reality of a Rome where the people and the soldiers were increasingly disillusioned with the aristocracy. Antony, with his populist appeal and military backing, represented a new era in Roman politics, one that would ultimately lead to the rise of the Roman Empire under Octavian. The bitter rivalry between Cicero and Mark Antony is a powerful example of how personal and political conflicts can shape the fate of nations. Cicero's attempt to use rhetoric to rally the Senate and the people against Antony failed because he misread the mood of Rome. Antony's victory over Cicero was not just the triumph of one man over another, it was the triumph of a new political reality over the old order. In the end, Cicero's death marked the end of the Roman Republic's greatest defender, while Antony's victory set the stage for the rise of the Roman Empire. This clash between elitism and populism is a reminder that politics is often a battle of competing visions for the future, and that the outcome of these battles can change the course of history. Cicero and Mark Antony's rivalry was not just a personal feud. It was a battle for the soul of Rome. Cicero, the brilliant orator and defender of the Republic, believed that the Senate should rule, while Antony, the populist soldier, sought power through the support of the people and the military. Their clash ended in Cicero's brutal execution and the rise of Antony's influence. It is a stark reminder that political rivalries can have profound consequences, shaping the fate of entire nations and the direction of history. The story of Cicero and Antony is a tale of ambition, ideology, and the harsh realities of power in ancient Rome. If you enjoyed this exploration of history and its lessons, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Join us as we uncover more intriguing stories from the past that resonate with our present, providing insights into the complexities of politics, philosophy, and human nature.